So BBC's overall mission is to ensure the continued existence of Pacific Island birds that are under threat from introduced species and habitat loss. The main area that we're working in right now is the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, or the CNMI. The program that we do there, our largest flagship program, is called the MAC program, or the Mariana Avifauna Conservation Program. Many Pacific Island nations have histories of Western civilization, Western colonization, military intervention. So we make sure that we're always coming to the table with a community conservation aspect in mind. We want to figure out the conservation goals of the community, how we can help them solve them and have them lead the way for us. You know, they had a front row seat of the devastation that was caused by the brown tree snake, or the BTS, on Guam. It was a major threat that they watched physically happen in front of their eyes.
These birds, there are no native big snakes here. It was probably just a handful that were stowaways on a cargo boat coming up. From the time they first sighted them to less than 20 years later, it had just about wiped out everything on Guam. And then they started getting reputable sightings of them on the other islands. Not going to understand why DFW was, we've got to do something. I'm glad they thought of us.
They met with AZA zoos to see if they could really start captive zoo populations of these species. And those conversations kind of led into, can we move these species? Can we translocate them? Can we take them from Saipan, Rota, Tinian, and move them to the sanctuary islands up to the north? So the target species that PBC works with, or has worked with in the past, are two wide-eye species, the bridled wide-eye, or the Nosa in Chamorro, and the golden wide-eye, or Canario. We've worked with a flycatcher species called the Rufous fantail, or Nabok, a fruit dove species called Totot, and we've worked with an endemic flycatcher that only lives on the island of Tinian. It's the Tinian monarch, or the Titsarikan Tinian. We've now moved into working with U.S. Fish and Wildlife listed species. So those are your critically endangered species, or your endangered species. The two species that we have currently worked with are the Rota wide-eye that's endemic to the island of Rota. It's the Nosaluda. And this past year, we worked with the Saipan reed warbler, which is endemic to Saipan. Its Chamorro name is the Gaga Karisu.
They call them mist nets, and it's usually a long net, anywhere from 6 meters to 3 times that. The concept is they're black, very fine mesh. We try to get them up before daylight so the birds don't see them. And when they fly their normal flight pattern, they hit the net, get folded into a pocket in a shelf, and then we can lower the net and extract them. Different ways of doing those. Some we use collapsible fishing poles to do in the interior where there's a lot of vegetation high. In big open areas, we will use metal conduit, which you can extend to go up to 3 different heights, or we use the aerial net, which is kind of a new toy for us, and everybody's enjoying using it. It involves getting a cable up over 2 different tree limbs and then attaching guide wires to the cable where we can run the nets between them.
When you're up in the field site, you're trying to collect 50 to 100 birds per year. You need to have a way to move them. So Pete Luscombe actually was the one that designed he engineered these beautiful boxes. They can hold 5 birds at once. So as we're catching birds and taking them out of the nets, the veterinarians are looking at them, giving them a quick overall, okay, you look good to go. We put them into one of the compartments in the bird box. If we can fill up the entire box, we call the folks down at the husbandry room. They drive the car up to the field site, grab the birds, and they bring them back down to the husbandry room that Ann works in.
The bird room is 50% of a very intricate translocation process. Because the islands are far enough apart that we can't just run birds from the field to the next island, we have to hold the birds for a temporary period. Having the time in the bird room allows us to perform health assessments to ensure that the birds are eating well, thriving, so that way we know we're bringing the healthiest individuals to that assurance island. It's a lot of caring for the birds, but also a lot of record keeping and analyzing.
Vet care really ties into conservation because, especially for translocations, you want to make sure you're translocating or moving healthy animals. And we want to make sure that when they're in our care, that they're staying as healthy as possible. And also getting as much information, DNA, sexing, just overall health, because again, some of these species, there are so few in the world that getting as much information, even before we move them, is really important. Oftentimes we're in very tight quarters, wearing headlamps so we can see it. Most of the species that we work with here on the islands are very, very small. So we're talking like 8 or 9 grams. Their blood vessels are like a piece of thread. So sometimes collecting blood from those, whether it's in the bird room or actually in the field, can be very challenging just from a health standpoint to make sure we're not actually creating injuries while we're collecting our samples and information.
If I'm in the field, then I'm gonna do a real quick assessment of the bird to make sure that there's been no injuries in the trapping or capture. And then they go in a transport box, and I would escort them over to the bird room where we care for them in our care for a couple weeks before translocation usually. And then at that bird room, I do a more thorough overlook. Looking head to toe, we're taking blood samples, fecal samples, looking at measurements and all the whole health of that animal to make sure it's fit to make that travel to our new location where hopefully it would thrive. All that information is so valuable, and it'll help other projects too. So it's not just us. We are going to give that information hopefully in articles or presentations so that other conservationists and biologists and veterinarians can kind of repeat some of the methods so that we can do even better.
You have a field component, you have a husbandry component, you have a veterinary component, and then you have a big expedition-style boat voyage release at the end of this. So we need to build a team every year to have veterinarians be able to triage birds if there's an emergency, to do overall health exams and things like that. We also need a whole team of veterinary technicians that can do the health screening, blood drawing, the parasite monitoring. We need a skill set of animal keepers that know how to prepare diets, know how to handle birds safely. We have education staff that work really close with our community and our school systems. We're constantly bringing field trips out. We're hosting internships of high schoolers and college students.
The education brings in the why. Why are we doing this? Why do we care? It incorporates the community, which is another really big aspect. I get to work with some of our partners on island, like the Mariana Islands Nature Alliance, the CNMI public school system, coordinating and communicating with them to schedule programs, whether that's library programs, school programs, field trips. With the education work and the conservation work we do, we play a supportive role. So it's how can we best help the teachers, how can we best help the community, and how can we work together to save these endangered birds.
Just like nature, nothing that we do with animals and zoos, conservation, nothing exists in a bubble. So we need to make sure that when we're doing conservation work, we're not just addressing one specific issue. If you come out to do conservation and you only address an introduced predator or habitat loss or something, you're not addressing the bigger picture. Really, our ultimate goal is to not have to travel from one side of the globe to the other, but to empower the local community to care for their own natural resources. And Pacific Bird Conservation and the Division of Fish and Wildlife out here have been really amazing and really focused on that from the beginning. The fact that we bring local school children out, we have local interns, the more passion we can develop in the youth, the better the future will be.
We have moved 5 species of birds, 11 different oceanic translocations since 2006. A lot of these bird populations are thriving now. They have assurance populations on the northern islands that we've moved them to, and it's just a really great poster child for community-driven collaborative conservation efforts.
I love this project. It's a fascinating experience. The crew is always great. The project itself has a really great base of information, and we work really closely with a lot of different organizations. And it's really cool that so many zoos come together for this project and really put heart and soul into it on all the different aspects. It's not one of us. It's not just the vet team. It's not just the bird room team. It's not just the field team. It's not just the education team. It's a whole package, and PBC really does that well.
What's so special, I think, about this project for me is that we're seeing results so quickly. We did a translocation, and even the next year, we're finding unbanded birds on that island, so we know they're reproducing, and it's wow, we're making a difference, and we're making it quickly.
I've absolutely fell in love with the CNMI, not only the beauty of the islands, but the people. They have so much pride in their island, their culture. To have those experiences with the students who are out in the field and they see some of these birds and they realize this really is the only place on earth that these birds are.
You know, part of the job is playing tour guide a lot of the times too. You know, when we have downtime, you want to show the people that have flown out here to do this conservation work, you want to show them these islands, you want to show them the community that lives there, the restaurants, the beaches, the forest, all of the sites. There's a lot of history in these islands. I've done a lot of the sites and exploring and the tours, and I'm always astounded at just how they leave you feeling like you're seeing them for the first time over and over again. Special, beautiful, just wonderful places of cultural significance and ecological significance do that to us. That's why we're on the planet. That's why we fight to protect places like this, because they're so important and they should be protected. They're unique and endemic and they're their own thing, and they just always leave you coming back for more.